What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we're going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down, take a bunch of videos that tell one overarching storyline and combine them together into one big video. Now, today's full story video is going to be about Ultimate Marvel Team Up. Ultimate Marvel Team Up was technically a series that was given to us after the first story arc of Ultimate Spider-Man. And the reason why, because around that point in time, we just got the Ultimate Marvel universe. We had no idea what this universe was all about. And so they gave us this series and they used Spider-Man as a way to meet the other characters in their brand new universe. Now, here's the thing though, guys, because when it comes to Ultimate Marvel Team Up, some of these books are technically not canon, and some are. It all depends on what a writer did later on in the Ultimate Marvel universe. But either way, there were 16 issues, and Spider-Man met a lot of different characters. Wolverine, Iron Man, Hulk, Punisher, Daredevil, the list goes on. And so, here is the entire series of Ultimate Marvel Team Up in one big video. Getting into today's storyline, we do pick up with Wolverine. Now, when we do, it's really more of Wolverine kind of just in a subway station minding his business, but of course he does hear a conversation going on. Now, when it comes to this conversation, it's just some random lady basically expressing the idea that she hates mutants a lot. And that should tell you where we are in the Ultimate Marvel timeline. Because around this point, there were no X-Men team yet going out there trying their best to convince the human race that mutants are actually good. And so, of course, with no X-Men team being around this point, mutants are very hated on. To the point where you have Wolverine get very tired of the lady and tells her, like, you know what's crazy about mutants? That they all look like regular humans. And so you have no idea if one is next to you or not. But then that is the moment where you have Sabretooth arrive. Now, when Sabretooth arrives, at first, you're kind of left to wonder why he's here for. As a matter of fact, at first, you would believe that this could be just some random encounter. There was no way that Sabretooth knew that Wolverine was there. But later on in the storyline, you're going to realize that is not technically true. Either way, you do have Sabretooth look at Wolverine, and Wolverine instantly goes ahead and begins to attack Sabretooth, to the point where he makes sure that he stabs Sabretooth good enough to be able to get away by getting on a train that closes doors and goes on to his next stop. And so Wolverine can rest just for a little while. We didn't pick up with Spider-Man. Now, when we do pick up with Spider-Man, around this point in the Ultimate Marvel timeline, Peter Parker is a Spider-Man in the Ultimate Marvel universe. As a matter of fact, at this point, he just became Spider-Man. So the first story arc where he fought against Green Goblin is the only thing that happened so far in his timeline. He has not fought against Doc Ock, Kingpin, Electro, or the rest of his rogue gallery. And matter of fact, it's still him trying to get used to the idea of being Spider-Man, but also the idea that you have the city getting used to the idea there is some guy out there known as Spider-Man who is trying to be some kind of hero. But we then quickly just jump back over to Sabretooth to see that he's technically going to chase down Wolverine, to the point where he does run after the train that Wolverine was on. Unfortunately for Sabretooth, Wolverine is no longer on that train, and so now he has to find another way to hopefully find, well, Wolverine. But real quickly, jumping over to Peter Parker, is him wondering if he is just some regular human or possibly a mutant. Now, because this was the earlier parts of the Ultimate Marvel universe, mutants in this universe was still a very new concept. Like, yes, they heard of mutants, but the public did not know what made a person a mutant. And so really, if you saw someone with powers, right off the bat, you were called a mutant. Even though you're most likely not a mutant, they would still call you a mutant because you had some powers that you were using in some kind of way. But not knowing that when it comes to mutants, they usually carry something known as the X gene. But for Peter Parker, he has no idea about the X gene or if he is a mutant or not. But getting back over to Wolverine, you have Wolverine calling up somebody where we kind of find out that Sabretooth being there was not part of Wolverine's plan, which honestly we already knew that. But what Wolverine is telling us that he is currently on the run from a particular group. Now, if you read Ultimate Marvel, you already know he's most likely on the run from Weapon X, who has a lot of different contracts with the American government and the American military. Either way, it seems like Wolverine was able to get away from Weapon X, and of course, they sent Sabretooth to bring him back, which honestly makes a whole lot of sense when you jump into Volume 2 of Ultimate X-Men. Now, the rest of the book is really more of, well, Wolverine getting some help from Spider-Man, because while you have Spider-Man just swinging around New York, he realized that Wolverine is surrounded by different characters, Sabretooth and some guys who are working with Sabretooth, but also working with Weapon X as well, surrounding Wolverine. And so the rest of the book is really more Spider-Man and Wolverine working together to fight against Sabretooth and his group. But this is actually the first time these two characters have met in the Ultimate Marvel universe, which, by the way, it does get referenced in later stories in Ultimate X-Men. I want to say also in Ultimate Spider-Man as well. But either way, you do have our two heroes being able to work together to take down Sabretooth and the two guys that were working with Sabretooth to hopefully bring Wolverine back into Weapon X, because they have spent a lot of money on Wolverine to make him the perfect weapon. But of course, you do have our two heroes being able to take down Sabretooth and get away from him and his fellow guys. But the book does really end on a good note, because once you have our two heroes being able to get away from Sabretooth, you didn't have Wolverine be that, you could say, a good friend towards Spider-Man, because you have Spider-Man still thinking that he is a mutant. And this is another example of the idea of the early days of the Ultimate Marvel universe, how the public knows what makes a person a mutant or not. But you have Wolverine ask Spider-Man a few questions, and after you have him answer those questions for Wolverine, he's all like, yeah dude, Spidey, you are not a mutant at all. So please stop trying to build some kind of connection between us and you. Like, you are in the clear, darn dude. The city's gonna fall in love with you most likely more than fall in love with us, because we are known as the Freaks. But you do have Wolverine leave. But before he does leave, he does tell Spider-Man that he does like Peter's outfit, his Spider-Man outfit. And the book ends. So getting into the opening pages of this book, we do pick up with Ben Urich and also Peter Parker. Now, with this setting right here, you can tell right off the bat, it takes place in the middle of the second story arc, where Peter Parker was able to secure some kind of job at the Daily Bugle. But at the same time, it takes place in the middle of the Ultimate X-Men first story arc. And the reason why I'm saying that, because The newspaper that Ben is reading, it does mention Sentinels being in New York. And of course, that took place in the first story arc of Ultimate X-Men. Either way, you have been trying to wonder what kind of homework Peter Parker is doing right now. Now, this is really more of Ben trying to build some kind of bond with Peter Parker. And the thing is, in later books of Ultimate Spider-Man, Ben and Peter do have that bond. It's not the strongest bond, but it is a particular bond where they do kind of like each other. Now, with that being said, Ben does get a call from somebody who says that he is the general of the United States Army. And of course, he's calling up Ben with a warning. Something big and green is heading towards New York, and you need to use your media power as a way to inform the public, because this thing is very powerful, but also very dangerous. Now, Ben cannot believe what he is hearing, but at the same time, he's kind of like, listen, we just had the Green Goblin, we have a Spider-Man, and I'm pretty sure other events have happened right now in the Ultimate Marvel universe, especially the idea of mutants as well. So this has been saying it could be a joke, but at the same time, we should be very cautious. And so he runs over to JJ's office to tell him what's going on. Except when he does get into JJ's office, JJ is currently arguing with Robbie Robertson about the idea of mutants. What I mean by that is JJ is trying to place an article that basically states bad things about mutants. And for Robbie, that is not okay. Now, this makes a lot of sense. And what I mean by that is not the idea of JJ placing an article that talks down on mutants. I really meant more of how the public felt about the idea of mutants being around, because this was the early days of the Ultimate Marvel timeline. And like I said in our last video, the mutant race will go up and down. Some days they're loved, some days the entire world hates on them. And currently here at this point in time, the entire world hates on them. Now, not the entire world, but most of the public. But for JJ, he's kind of like, listen, if I go ahead and place an article that talks down on mutants, I'll have more people buy my paper than the ones who are going to hate my paper because I'm talking down about mutants. Now, while you have the two grown men going back and forth, that is when you have Ben say, hey, I just got a call from the general that's trying to tell us that we need to use our media powers to basically warn the public about the idea of something green and powerful coming into New York that could cause a lot of damage. Now, for JJ, he's still kind of new to the idea of superpower beings being in New York, because like I said, this is the earlier stage of the Ultimate Marvel universe. You got Spider-Man and you have some X-Men characters running around. No Ultimates yet, and no other kind of superheroes at all either. You might have Daredevil, but he wasn't referenced by this point in the Ultimate Marvel universe. But for JJ, he's kind of like, listen, whoever called you was most likely pulling a prank on you. There's no way no huge danger is coming over to New York, except that is when they hear a loud boom sound. But then we pick up with Spider-Man. Now, like I said earlier, Peter Parker is still new to the idea of being a hero. He's still new to being Spider-Man. And currently, when it comes to the public, they think of Spider-Man as some kind of wrestler, because that happened in the first story arc, just like in the original Marvel timeline. And so when it comes to Peter Parker being Spider-Man, he's still new to the world. And of course, he's kind of freaking out like, okay, something big and green has arrived in New York. And just like that, his mind goes straight to the idea of the Green Goblin. Harry Osborn's father, Norman Osborn. He's all like, oh my God, Norman's back. He's the Green Goblin again, and he's attacking New York. But of course, that is incorrect. He is not going to run into the Green Goblin this time. He's going to run into another green monster. Now, the rest of the book is really more of Spider-Man trying his best to fight against the Hulk. Now, you're probably wondering, hey, Fresh, why is he green, not gray, like he is in the rest of the Ultimate Marvel books? Well, there is a very good reason why. Because originally, 16 years ago, when Bruce and the Parkers were recruited by Nick Fury to kind of help recreate the super soldier serum, Bruce created a bunch of different kinds of serum. One of them was the Hulk serum. Now, the thing was, though, they had a huge rule. Do not test your experiments on yourself. Well, Bruce went ahead and did that because, again, he hated his body so much. He wanted a strong body like Steve Rogers. Except when he took one of his serums, it was the Hulk serum, which of course made him into a Green Hulk. Now, after this particular story arc right here, the American government and Nick Fury were able to find a way to cure his Hulk mutation. Except when it came to Ultimates 1, he wanted to help the Ultimates get out there in the public to make sure they're well known as heroes. They needed a bad guy to come together to fight against. And so Bruce took it upon himself to make a new Hulk serum, except this time with the actual super soldier serum that comes to Steve Rogers, and he mixed the two together, which of course made the Gray Hulk. So yes, there's your reason why there's two different colors Hulks, because of two different kinds of Hulk serums. Either way, the rest of the first chapter of this book, or the story arc, is just Spider-Man trying his best to fight against the Hulk. And, well, unfortunately, getting his butt kicked very easily. And matter of fact, when it comes to the second chapter, most of the second chapter continue what the first chapter did at the tail end of it. Which, of course, is just Spider-Man fighting against the Hulk. And this goes on for a few more pages. Now, again, this is still Peter Parker still trying to figure out how to be Spider-Man, but to also try to figure out how to fight against different kinds of characters. And so currently, the only characters he saw so far is most likely the Green Goblin, Wolverine, Sabretooth, Kingpin, Electro, and now the Hulk. Now, you could say the Hulk is very similar to the Green Goblin, except at least when Peter Parker fights against the Green Goblin, he does do some kind of damage to the Green Goblin. When it comes to Hulk here, Spider-Man ain't doing jack to him at all. I mean, yes, occasionally he does some kind of damage to the Hulk and the Hulk does get hurt a tad bit, but at the same time, though, the Hulk's all like, it barely hurt me. So the Hulk's kind of like, dude, I'm trying to squash you and easily kill you. Now, this does kind of lead us into the moment where Peter Parker do get the chance to actually meet the Bruce Banner persona. Because once you have the Hulk eat a fish and basically calms down, he turns back into Bruce Banner. Now, once that happens, you have Bruce freaking out, which honestly makes a lot of sense because Bruce has no idea what the Hulk does when the Hulk takes over their actual body. And so once you have Bruce coming back in control of his own body, he realized, okay, I'm no longer in Nevada. That means I'm somewhere else. Now, Spider-Man tells Bruce, yeah, dude, you are right now in New York. And that right there scares Bruce a lot because the idea of so many innocent people who could be affected by the Hulk in some kind of way. Now, with all that being said, this could have been a special moment if Bendis did plan on telling us in Ultimate Origins that Peter Parker and Bruce Banner have a connection with one another with the Parker family. But of course, Ultimate Origins came out years and years later after this one right here did. And so of course, Bendis had no idea or hasn't even thought of the idea of trying to build some kind of connection between Bruce and also Peter Parker. Now, while you have the two men talking to one another, well, that is when you have General Ross appear. Now, this is his first appearance in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. He does play a role in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, but not as big as his main Marvel Universe counterpart. Matter of fact, he'll reappear in the earlier books of the Ultimate Fantastic Four. Either way, when it comes to General Ross, he's here to capture Bruce Banner. They had him locked up, but of course, Bruce got out, turned to the Hulk, and then ran away. And so this is the military trying their best to capture the Hulk once again. Now, for Spider-Man, he's still very confused about what in the world is currently going on when it comes to the Hulk and also the military. But unfortunately, you have Bruce once again freak out. And when he does, he turns back into the Hulk. And then you have the military go ahead and fire their weapons on the Hulk, but also Spider-Man as well, which of course blows up the entire building that was on the harbor in the middle somewhere in New York City. Either way, The place gets blown up, the Hulk gets away, the military continues to chase after Hulk, and you have Spider-Man just sit there and kind of like, you know what? They're both gone. It's time for me to go ahead and go home. And this is where So when it comes to the early parts of today's video or today's storyline, we do pick up with Peter Parker currently reading off his latest paper that he wrote on Tony Stark. Now, when it comes to Peter Parker, the reason why he did a paper on Tony is because there is a competition currently going on at Midtown High to see which student will have the ability to write the best paper to have the chance to meet Tony Stark in person. And of course, Peter Parker is going to win the competition, except when it comes to Peter Parker's paper, it's really used as a way to give us the origin of Tony Stark. And when it comes to the first attempt in telling us the origin of Tony Stark in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, you can see right off the bat why I say Ultimate Marvel Team Up is a very unique kind of series that's technically not used in most of the books of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. For example, when it comes to the first part of the origin of Ultimate Iron Man, we are told that he was born to a great family, a mom, a dad, and he also had apparently 2 little sisters. Now that is red flag number 1, because later on in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, we met his brother, his evil brother. But of course, in this book right here, his brother is not referenced at all. But on top of that, his sisters are also not referenced at all in later books either. And so it's kind of like, okay, what was the actual structure of this family? We also kind of find out that Tony Stark built his company from the ground up. It wasn't given to him by his father, but apparently in college he met Reed Richards, another red flag, because in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, Reed and the rest of the Fantastic Four were technically college kids. They were 18, 19, 20, possibly 21. I won't say even higher 25 because they were very young. But in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, Iron Man was kind of like in his late 20s, early 30s. But on top of that, the Reed Richards in this book right here, you'll never see him again because this is not our Reed of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. So another red flag. Now on top of that though, when it comes to his actual origin story, how he created the Iron Man suit, we are told that when he was in Guatemala with his cousin, apparently they were all kidnapped along with other passengers as soon as their plane arrived in Guatemala. Now they were captured by a terrorist group known as the Red Devils. And when it comes to the Red Devils, they wanted Iron Man, Tony Stark, to make them a bunch of weapons so that they're able to win their war in their country. Now, of course, that was the moment where you had Tony create his first Iron Man suit to help himself break free, but also other prisoners as well who being held against their will. Now, once he came back over to America, he continued the idea of building more and different kinds of Iron Man suits, or they call them Iron Tech. Yes, they call him Iron Tech. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. But either way, when it comes to Tony Stark, he's a well-known hero in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. But thing is, you have other companies who feel like Iron Man or Tony is being very selfish about the idea of not sharing how he was able to build a suit like that, an Iron Man suit, because other companies also want to do the same thing as well. But Iron Man is not sharing that idea with anybody at all. But getting back over to Peter Parker in his paper, because he was able to tell the first attempt of the origin of Ultimate Iron Man, he wins the competition and now he has the chance to meet Tony Stark in person. But getting back over to Tony Stark, we currently see him right now in a meeting with a guy known as Mr. Golog. And I really hope I pronounced that name correctly, but it does look like Mr. Golog. Either way, when it comes to Mr. Golog, he is from Latveria. Now, when it comes to their conversation, it seems like Latveria wants to pay Tony Stark a huge amount of money to hopefully learn how he was able to build the Iron Man suit, because they also wanted the same thing as well in Latveria. Now, when it comes to their conversation, we are left to believe that there is a Doctor Doom in Latveria that we have not met yet in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. I'm going to tell you right now, at this point in time, there was no actual Doctor Doom, because the Ultimate Fantastic Four come way later in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Either way, when it comes to Mr. Tony Stark here, he does tell Mr. Golog, listen, I told you no on the phone. And matter of fact, I told you to stay in your country and do not even try to fly over here and try to convince me in person to give you my Iron Man suit. I told you to stay there in your country. And here you are now getting the same answer I told you on the phone, which is no. The thing is, you guys, you and your president, should work on giving your people better food to eat, rather than trying to get Iron Man suits over in your country. Now, once the meeting is done and you have Mr. Golog leave, that is when you have Tony Stark's hand begin to twitch. And this right here is a sign to one part of today's origin story that is actually true and used in other books in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. The idea that Tony Stark has a tumor in his brain. But getting back over to Spider-Man, he's trying to head over to the good old Stark International Science Expo event. Now, here's the thing, because this is why I say it takes place after the first story arc of Ultimate Spider-Man. Because while you have Peter Parker in his Spider-Man suit just swinging through the city, he tells us that after being bitten by the spider and of course becoming Spider-Man, his hunger got even bigger for food. And so homeboy truly eats. But on top of that, he is a teenager. At that point, and guys, I remember as a teenager, you were always hungry. So of course, this kid is even hungrier than most teenagers are. But either way, it kind of shows that this is still the early days of Peter Parker being Spider-Man in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. But he does arrive to the expo and he cannot wait to meet Tony Stark to hopefully tell Tony how much he looks up to him. And so while you have Peter Parker go inside the expo, this man is literally in heaven right now. He is super excited because yes, this is a science expo, but at the same time, this is a Iron Man expo. So yes, Peter Parker loves science, but also this entire expo is for his idol. And Peter Parker is happy about the idea of meeting Iron Man. Now, while you have Peter Parker just walking around having a good old time, well, that is when someone literally blows the roof off the ceiling. Yes, you have a bunch of men in armor suits appear and they're here to try to steal the Iron Man suit. Now, Fresh here is going to tell you guys right off the bat that these guys work for Latveria. Yes, they do, because let's not forget earlier, Mr. Golog, who is from also Latveria, was trying to buy the Iron Man suit so that Latveria would be able to copy the suit. And so these guys in armor suits, better known as Mandroids, are here working for Latveria to hopefully get the Iron Man suit. Now you do have Iron Man appear, and you do have Iron Man try his best to fight against the Mandroids as a way to protect the innocent people. Now Peter Parker is not going to jump in just yet. Matter of fact, he'll jump in at the middle part of the second chapter. Either way, you have Iron Man feeling very confident about the idea that he should be able to handle these Mandroids. Now, unfortunately, thanks to his cockiness, Tony Stark gets messed up. I mean, literally, he flies in, he's all cocky, and they're all like, okay, you believe that you are able to take us down? Well, guess what? We made a special weapon that can shut down your suit, and now we're gonna move you onto our jet and fly you back over to Latveria to study that good old armor of yours so that we are able to copy it. Now, as we dive into the second chapter for today's video, we do pick back up with the origin of Iron Man once again. Now, here's the thing, because this part of the origin is actually kept when it comes to the idea of the complete story of Iron Man in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Everything we saw in the first chapter is really not kept at all. But things in the second chapter is actually kept when you have writers down the road coming back to retell the origin of Iron Man in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, when it comes to the rest of his origin, it does deal with the idea like him going to Guatemala with his cousin Morgan, because his cousin Morgan did promise him a huge business deal with somebody in Guatemala. And we come to find out that business deal was most likely with the Red Devils, a terrorist group in Guatemala who wanted Tony Stark's tech as a way to help them take over their country. And so as soon as Tony and his cousin Morgan and a few other passengers on the plane arrived in the country, they were basically taken in as prisoners. And their goal was to force Tony to make the weapons they need to win their war against their enemies. Except when it came to Tony, he did not like the idea of helping out a group of terrorists be able to take over a country. And so he was not down with the idea of giving them weapons to help them win. And so they kill off his cousin Morgan, who was also a business partner. Now, after his cousin had died, they still try to tell Tony, you are going to make us weapons. Now, Tony does make weapons, but not for them. He makes the first Iron Man suit as a way to escape. And this part of his origin is technically kept when it comes to the idea of the actual story of Iron Man's origin. Oh, by the way, so is the tumor on his brain as well, is also kept, because when it comes to Mark Millar in the Ultimate series, he will reference the idea that Iron Man has brain cancer. Now, the rest of the book is really more of Iron Man and Spider-Man working together, because while you have Peter Parker running away to get some help, he does get blasted into another area, which of course gives him enough time to change into his Spider-Man outfit. And so while he is changing, you have the Mandroids trying to take Tony Stark away, and of course the Iron Man suit as well, to hopefully find a way to copy the suit. And so luckily for Iron Man, you do have Peter Parker come back as Spider-Man, and they are able to work together to fight off against the Mandroids. Well, at first it's just Spider-Man, but once Iron Man's suit does recharge or reboot and being able to help out Spider-Man, you have our two heroes, like I said earlier, being able to take down this group of Mandroids. And so it does look like the day is saved, and you have our two heroes go their separate ways. But this was the first time, technically, Spider-Man met Iron Man. Now, the story's not done all the way just yet, because the last 2 pages really show us Mr. Golog was working with somebody else. That somebody else was Nick Fury, because at this point, Tony was not really helping out S.H.I.E.L.D. at all. Or apparently he wasn't at this point in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. But when it comes to Nick Fury, his main goal was to hopefully have Mr. Golog find a way to get the Iron Suit away from Tony so that S.H.I.E.L.D. will be able to copy the suit as well for their own personal needs. Now, when it comes to Nick Fury, he told Mr. Golog, I will not help you, but if you are able to come to my country and get your hands on a suit, then you must also give me the copy of the suit to me as well. But unfortunately, Golog and the Mandroids failed. But because Golog Mandroids did attack an American citizen on American soil, they look like terrorists right now, and it could be taken as an act of war from Latveria. Either way, you have Nick send Golog away, and now we know that even back then, Nick Fury had plans on plans for many different things. But this is where to today's storyline, we do pick up with Frank Castle currently in prison. Now, the reason why he is in prison is going to be told to us here in a moment, but we do see Frank Castle currently listening in a conversation going on between two other inmates in prison. Now, these two inmates are talking about the idea of getting out of prison because the Shocker just got out of prison. And this should tell you right off the bat, this takes place after the second story arc in Ultimate Spider-Man. Now, when it came to Shocker, the reason why he was able to get out of prison is because his lawyer said, hey, Spider-Man is a vigilante, which means that he has no rights to stop my client. But on top of that, he has no rights to help police officers stop my client either, which means that Spider-Man went against my client's rights. Just like that, the Shocker got out very easily. But these two inmates are talking about the idea of calling up their lawyers and doing the same thing Shocker did with his lawyer to say that, hey, they were stopped by a vigilante. Now, they were not stopped by Spider-Man. They were stopped by Daredevil. But the thing is, he's still a vigilante, which means that he did go against their rights. But the thing is, though, one of these guys is actually an abuser. One of the worst kind of abuse. Really, all abuse is bad. Either way, though, he is an abuser. But he is talking about the idea of calling up his lawyer to have his lawyer get him out of prison so that he will be able to continue his abuse on somebody else. Now, as soon as Frank Castle hears this, he's all like, no, that is not okay at all. And so you have Frank Castle grab a spoon and use the spoon as a way to cut the guy's throat. Now, just like that, he is grabbed by a bunch of guards. And this is where we kind of find out that Frank Castle was thrown in prison because he killed a cop. And that right there is very important for the overall storyline. But we also kind of find out Frank Castle was a cop. So he was a cop that killed another cop. But the question is, though, why? Now, after that, you do have Frank Castle have a meeting with his doctor, Dr. Rubin. Now, when it comes to Dr. Rubin, really, we're not going to learn much about her character at all. Instead, she's only here trying to understand the mind of Frank Castle, but to kind of help us dive into his origin story here in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, like I said earlier, the reason why he is in prison because he killed a cop, and he was a cop. But the question is right now, why did he kill that other cop for? Now, when it comes to Dr. Rubin, she does tell us that right after his family was killed off, that was when the Punisher came to life. Frank Castle began to go after other bad people across the world as the Punisher. Now, at first, no one knew that Frank Castle was the Punisher until he was arrested. But after that, the world found out, okay, Frank Castle is the Punisher, but they only found out after he had killed that cop. Now, the thing is, though, she says, you know what? I told the justice system it was a bad idea to put you in prison. Now, it's not her saying like, oh, because he's innocent. It's more the idea like, he is the Punisher. His whole idea is to go after bad people and to kill them off. You took this character and then put him inside a prison that is full of bad people. What in the world were you actually thinking? And she's right, because honestly, this is a bad move to do. But the thing is, she wants to know, why did he kill that cop for? Because if she finds out, then maybe she can kind of help him in other areas when it comes to being locked up. But when it comes to Frank Castle, he does not want to talk at all. Now, real quick, when it comes to Brian Michael Bendis, when he is writing Ultimate Punisher, the dude makes sure the Punisher barely has any lines at all. Literally any lines. Most of the time, he probably says 10 words and that is it. Now, when other writers use Frank Castle in the Ultimate Marvel Universe and their stories, they give the Punisher extra lines to kind of show off the idea that the Punisher can speak. He can say a whole lot more lines than just 5 words and that is it. Either way, when it comes to Dr. Rubin, she wants Frank to talk to her. But again, this is written by Brian Michael Bendis, and so the Punisher does not talk to her at all. And so unfortunately, she cannot help him, and now she has to leave. But we finally pick up with Spider-Man. Now, when it comes to Spider-Man, like I said earlier, the dude barely appears in this story arc at all. Literally, he mostly appears in the final chapter of this 3-part story arc. And so when he appears right here, it's only for 2 pages. And the reason why, because while you have Peter Parker being Spider-Man and just, swinging around town, minding his business, he sees a crowd of people cheering for him. And then all the cheers goes away. And now they are scared. And the reason why, because there is a billboard right behind Spider-Man that says, "The Punisher has just broke out of prison." The guy who's a well-known serial killer has just got out of prison and now on the loose. And so now a lot of people in New York are very scared of the idea of the Punisher being out there once again. But as we jump into the second chapter, we do pick up with a random cop who's very upset about the idea of the Punisher being out of prison. Now, here's the thing. He's also upset about the idea that there are other people who like the idea of Frank Castle being the Punisher, going around killing off bad people who he thinks deserves to die. And the thing is, if the Punisher finds you, you're a bad person, you are for sure going to die. And you'll see what I mean here in a moment. But this cop is very upset with Frank Castle being out and other people who are technically fans of Frank Castle. Now, when his cop goes out to his car, he's confronted by Frank Castle, and Frank wants to kill him off. He's all like, "Hey man, it's time for you to die." Now this cop, he knows Frank very well, and he is literally begging Frank, "Please don't kill me. And if you do, please do not shoot off my face. Please just, kill me, but shoot me in my gut instead." And Frank, he's all like, "Dude, I don't care at all," and literally blows a man's head off and goes on with his day. Just like that, that cop is now dead. But then we pick up with a character known as Bruce Greenwood. Now, when it comes to Bruce, he is currently meeting up with his lawyer, and his lawyer would be Matt Murdock. Now, when it comes to Matt in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, this was his first appearance. Now, when it comes to his origin, it's not really told to us. And the reason why, because it's very similar to his main Marvel Universe counterpart. And so technically, it kind of gets told to us very quick and fast so that we are able to move on to Bruce. And the reason why, because we're going to use Bruce as a way to tell the origin of Ultimate Punisher. And when it comes to Bruce Greenwood, we kind of find out that he used to be the partner to Frank Castle when Frank was a police officer. Now, here's the thing, because when it comes to Bruce, he tells us right off the bat that the entire precinct that him and Frank worked at was filled with dirty cops left and right. And the reason why, because they were getting paid under the table by another person who was trying to become the kingpin of crime in New York. And of course, that character would be the Owl. Now, when it comes to the Owl in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, I want to say this is the only time he's ever referenced at all. But on top of that, it seems like he's very similar to his main Marvel Universe counterpart, that he is trying to become the kingpin of crime in New York by paying off a bunch of police officers left and right. Now, when it came to the precinct that Frank and Mr. Bruce here have both worked at, they had a sergeant known as Arthur Juliet. Now, when it comes to Arthur Juliet, he was like the biggest dirty cop in the entire precinct, but he was also the right-hand man for the Owl. Really, he was more of the middleman for the Owl. And what I mean by that is, if you were a dirty cop in that precinct, but you wanted some money from the Owl, you had to go through Arthur. Now, here's the thing, because every other cop in that precinct was basically dirty, including Bruce. Now, for Bruce, the only reason why he did what he did is because he needed some money to support his family. Either way, every single cop in that precinct was basically a crooked cop, except Frank Castle. And matter of fact, it bothered Arthur so much that he wanted to get rid of Frank Castle. He was trying to find so many different ways to get rid of Frank, but unfortunately, he had no good ideas at all. Now, things got even harder on Juliet when Eternal Affairs came in, because word got out that this precinct was filled with dirty cops left and right. Now, of course, when they came by, they couldn't find any hard evidence that proved that this entire precinct was filled with dirty cops until Frank Castle. See, Frank Castle had enough with the idea these cops were not being good cops, and so he gave Eternal Affairs enough evidence to bring down almost every single member of the precinct who was technically a dirty cop. This man was going hardcore to make sure justice is restored in this precinct. And the thing is, Arthur and other cops did not like the idea at all. And so they came up with a crazy game plan, which was to kill off Frank Castle. They're going to bring in a bunch of guys to make it look like a gang war had technically popped out in the middle of the park, and the only person who got shot would have been Frank Castle. We already know that did not go as planned, because instead his entire family got killed off and not Frank Castle. And so that is why Frank is going after different cops who are part of that precinct, because Frank learned that basically the people who killed off his family were the same ones from his precinct. Now, once Matt hears his story, you have Matt Murdock tell Bruce, you gotta confess this to someone else. Like, you gotta turn yourself in, my dude, because technically what you are telling me that you were involved in the death of 3 other people, but on top of that, you're the reason why we have the Punisher in the world. So yeah, you have to go out and literally turn yourself in, and hopefully you'll have some protection from the Punisher. Now, as soon as Matt says that, the Punisher was across the street and literally just kills off Bruce through the windows just like that. Just shooting into Matt's office all over the place and killing off Bruce. And once that happened, you have Matt quickly leave the office and go and change into his Daredevil outfit. Now, when it comes to Matt Murdock, it really kind of shows that the ultimate version of Matt Murdock is not as great as his main Marvel Universe counterpart. And what I mean by that is, he is quickly caught off guard by the Punisher, because as soon as he gets outside, the Punisher was able to sneak up on him and put a gun to his head, just like that. And for me personally, I'm kind of like, even though the Punisher is a well-trained killer, you're going to tell me that he was still able to sneak up perfectly behind Matt Murdock, Daredevil, who has enhanced senses, and his hearing had also improved as well. But apparently, he did not hear the Punisher sneak up from behind. And so as we jump into the third and final chapter, we do pick up with Matt Murdock and Frank Castle having a conversation with one another. Now, when it comes to their conversation, it's really more of Matt Murdock and Frank kind of debating over their different opinions about the justice system. Now, this is also Matt trying his best to talk down Frank from the idea of killing off Matt, because what you have Matt saying to Frank is that it's not a good idea to kill him off, but it's also not a good idea to kill off the people who had killed his family so many years ago, because Matt's saying you have to trust in the actual justice system. If you were able to come forward with the proof that your family was killed off by a bunch of crooked cops, then just maybe the justice system may do you right and get rid of those men who did you harm. But it's Frank saying, why in the world would I trust in the same system that got my family killed, got me thrown in jail? Like, why in the world would I do that? Because in that same system, you have a bunch of cops who are technically crooked and working for bad men in the city. For example, his last boss, when it came to Arthur Juliet, he works for the Owl, who is trying to become the next kingpin of crime in New York. Now, you have the Punisher shoot at Daredevil, and you have Matt tell us that he's not really great at dodging bullets, which means that Frank was not going to kill off Matt at all. And so you have Frank leave, and Matt's wondering, where is Frank going to go next? Now, Matt has to change back into his regular clothes and get back into his office before the police arrive. And when they do arrive, he pretends to be somebody that was so scared because he heard a bunch of gunshots happening in his office. But in reality, he knows what exactly went down. Now, you have the cops examine the body, and of course, it's Bruce from earlier. But that is the moment where you have Arthur Juliet walk in. Now, when he walks in, he claims that he was in the neighborhood when he heard the call, but honestly he knew that, hey, the Punisher must have gone after somebody else in his circle, and unfortunately it was Bruce. And we come to find out Arthur Juliet is the last cop left in that group that had killed off Frank Castle's family, and so he is very concerned about the idea that Frank might come after him next, which honestly Frank is going to do that very soon. And matter of fact, it does not take that long for Frank to come after Juliet, because when it comes to Juliet or Arthur, when he goes back home to his kids, this is him making sure that at least he has one more last moment with his children before he, well, gets killed off by Frank. Except that is the moment Frank enters his apartment and tells Arthur, hey, go upstairs to the roof so I will not kill you off in front of your family. Now, when it comes to Frank, he's actually more down with the idea of killing off Juliet in front of his kids, but it's Frank saying, you know what, I'll give you this last wish, but you're still going to die. Now, before Frank is able to pull the trigger, he is stopped by Matt Murdock, Daredevil, who is once again trying to reason with Frank about the idea of letting the justice system work to bring these men down, to have them basically stand up for the crimes that they have committed. Now, here's the thing though, because out of nowhere, you have Spider-Man appear. Now, by this point in the story, Spider-Man has no idea what in the world is going on. The only thing he saw was Frank Castle with a gun pointed at a guy that he was trying to kill. There's also Daredevil, but for Spider-Man, the guy with the gun has to go first. And so that is why he attacked the Punisher. And so you have Matt get very upset with Spider-Man because now Arthur Juliet is trying to get away. Oh, by the way, Matt Murdock got shot because when Spider-Man kicked Frank in the face, he did pull the trigger and that bullet hit Matt Murdock in the shoulder. Either way, you have Matt say, I'll stay here and take care of this guy, the Punisher, while you go after the guy that's getting away. Of course, that would be Arthur. And so on the next page, we see both characters are going to jail for their crimes. Now, once you have Frank Castle go back over to the prison, well, he is confronted by Dr. Bruce. Now, when it comes to Dr. Bruce, she does tell Frank that when it came to the warden and other people involved in his actual trial this time, they wanted to lock up Frank in solitary forever because this man is a cold-blood killer. Except a great lawyer, of course, Matt Murdock, was able to work out a better deal where he will not be locked up in solitary at all. And also, he will be able to go to a regular cell and have a cellmate as well. Now, here's the thing. Because we kind of find out his cellmate is actually his old sergeant, Arthur Juliet, the guy that he was trying to kill off earlier until he was stopped by Spider-Man. Matt Murdock was able to work out some kind of deal that will let Frank and Arthur become cellmates, which means that Frank is about to enjoy this next kill very, very soon. But this into today's story arc, we do pick up with Peter Parker being confronted by Herbie. Now, Herbie is the robot that currently helps the Fantastic Four run the Baxter Building while they are away on different kinds of adventures. Now, when it comes to Peter Parker, the reason why he's at the Baxter Building because he was chosen for a career shadowing event, meaning that he is able to actually follow Reed Richards around for the day to kind of learn what it's like to be Reed Richards. Now, with that being said, when it comes to Herbie, he does tell Peter Parker that you have to follow certain kinds of instructions, certain kind of rules we have at the Baxter Building. Like, for example, you must stay on the path I give you. Follow the red line, because if you go off the red line, it could most likely get you in trouble in some kind of way, because this is the Baxter Building and we have a whole lot of crazy things that could sometimes kill you or just change you. Now, when it comes to Herbie, he did run a few tests on Peter Parker to make sure that he is safe to be in the Baxter Building, but Herbie tells us that it knows that Peter Parker, one, has powers, and two, that he is Spider-Man. Either way, you have Herbie say you are allowed to go ahead and go inside the Baxter Building. Now, once you have Peter Parker go inside the Baxter Building, well, that is when he's confronted by Patsy Walker. Now, when it comes to Patsy Walker, she's better known as Hellcat in the main Marvel universe. Matter of fact, in the Ultimate Marvel universe, she also becomes Hellcat as well. Now, here's the thing though, because like I said earlier, this book is totally not canon. And so this Patsy Walker is not the one we got later on in the Ultimate Spider-Man book. Matter of fact, when it came to Brian Michael Bendis, he would use Patsy Walker in Ultimate Spider-Man number 11 as one of the many characters who are technically a joke. And then later on, she'll be used as a bad guy in one of the Ultimates book. And so this is just another example of this book not being canon. But right now you have Patsy Walker telling Peter Parker the origin of the Fantastic Four in this supposed book. Now, when it comes to the origin of the Fantastic Four in this story, we kind of find out that one, Reed Richards is very similar to his main Marvel Universe counterpart. Matter of fact, he's older, just like the main Marvel Universe counterpart he has. And that was another part that was changed once Marvel did launch Ultimate Fantastic Four, because in that actual series, the Fantastic Four were a whole lot younger, but in this book right here, they are a whole lot older. On top of that, we are left to believe that they were the first superhero team in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, the first family, just like in the main Marvel Universe, except that is not true, because as we know, this story is not canon. Now, when it comes to them getting their powers, they got their powers from the negative zone. Now, technically, Brian Michael Bendis would use this again in the Ultimate Fantastic Four book to kind of explain how they got their powers in that series right there. But in this book right here, we are told that the Fantastic Four went into the negative zone to explore it. Now, while being inside there, they have saw all different kinds of creatures. But because they were in there for so long, it changed them. Of course, it gave them their powers. So you had Reed Richards becoming Mr. Fantastic. Johnny Storm became the Human Torch. Susan Storm became the Invisible Woman. And Ben Grimm became the Thing. But once they came out of the negative zone, they became the Fantastic Four. And they're well known for stopping different kinds of bad guys across the Ultimate Marvel Universe. So for example, they stopped Doctor Doom as well. But like I said, this story is not canon, and so this Doctor Doom does not count at all. Now, once Peter Parker is able to meet the Fantastic Four, he's trying to have a conversation with them. But unfortunately, they are not listening. And the reason why? Because Reed Richards and the rest of his team is trying to fix his coffee machine, the one he made. And the thing is, while you have him trying to fix it, you have his wife, Susan, trying to tell him, dude, just go to Walmart and buy a cheap one for like $10. But of course, this is Reed. He does everything extra level. And so this man is trying his best to basically fix his super advanced coffee machine. Now, when it comes to Peter Parker, he's trying his best to introduce himself. But like I said earlier,
they are not listening, to the point where the alarms go off and you have the team leave to handle that situation somewhere in the city. But on their way out, they believe that Peter Parker is an intern. And so, of course, they give him a task to do, which is, hey, go to Starbucks and go buy us coffee. By the time we get back here, you should also be back here as well. And the thing is, Peter Parker is not an intern. He is here to shadow Reed Richards. But unfortunately, they leave and they give Peter money to go get the coffee for them. Now, y'all, let me tell y'all, this is where the story goes a tad bit, not a tad bit, it goes completely bonkers. You can tell Brian Michael Bendis was not trying at all when it came to this book here. Because then you have Peter Parker being very upset about the idea that, you know what, the Fantastic Four don't realize I'm not an intern. I'm here to career shadow. And so while he's all mad and everything, he goes off the path that Herbie had put him on, and he finds the portal that leads into the negative zone. And once he does open up the portal, we kind of find out that inside the negative zone, it is technically the home of the Skrulls of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, like I said, this story is not canon. As a matter of fact, we'll meet the Skrulls again down the road in a later book. Either way though, when it comes to Peter Parker opening up this portal, a bunch of Skrulls come out of it and they begin to wreak havoc across the city because they're looking for Reed Richards. And so you have Peter Parker change into his Spider-Man outfit to hopefully stop the Skrulls. And so you have Peter Parker fighting against the Skrulls all over the city, to the point where they start fighting in Marvel Comics' office. Yes, you heard that right. The office of Marvel Comics. So you have different writers and editors just hanging out in their office while Spider-Man is fighting against the Skrulls. And these are real people who are working on this book or other books at the time at Marvel Comics. Either way, it's Peter Parker just fighting in the office of Marvel Comics for the heck of it. This is why I say it's literally one of the worst, no, not one of, it is the worst Ultimate Marvel team up book, because it gets even crazier. Because you can tell that Brian Michael Bendis had no idea what he wanted to do with this particular story. And what I mean by that is because he realized it's time for him to go ahead and wrap this book up. And so out of nowhere, you have the Fantastic Four appear. Now, when they do appear, you have Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four use a gun that can technically teleport the Skrulls back into the negative zone. Now, once he does that, he begins to lecture Peter Parker. He's all like, hey man, listen, we already know that you're Spider-Man, but on top of that, we already know it's your fault the Skrulls got out. So hey, listen, next time, be more careful. And I'm kind of like, what in the world is going on in this book? And the book really ends on that note right there. Yeah. And then years later, we get the actual proper Ultimate Fantastic Four team, which still sucked, but better than this stuff right here. So that's why I said this is the worst Ultimate Marvel team up book. It really felt like Bendis was told to kind of just put a story together because they needed one, and he's all like, fine, here you go. They're all like, oh, perfect, cool, and they actually ran it. Man, it sucks. Either way, guys, this is where we are going. And this one does get referenced a few times in the main Ultimate Spider-Man series. Matter of fact, it does get referenced in the Ultimate Carnage storyline. Either way, as we dive into today's video or today's storyline, we do pick up with two guys who are currently robbing some random lady. They took her purse. Now, of course, they realize that they most likely won't get that far on foot. And so their bright idea is to go in the sewers as a way to get away from the cops. Now, one of the guys is technically scared to go down there, and the reason why, because he has heard about the idea there is some kind of monster down there in the sewers. Now, his partner's kind of like, dude, it's all make-believe, just go ahead and come down here with me. Now, this kind of shows the early days of Ultimate Marvel, because with Spider-Man appearing, that was when you had all these different kind of characters popping up left and right. And so to the public, this was still a regular, peaceful world. Not the idea where it's like, oh my God, we have superheroes everywhere. Either way, when it came to his partner, as soon as he gets into the sewers, he is grabbed and killed off by the Lizard. And so this leads us into the actual origin of Curt Connors. Now, here's the thing. Ultimate Curt Connors is very similar in some areas to his main Marvel Universe counterpart. And really, later on, we'll see some big changes in the character in later books in Ultimate Marvel Universe. But for right now, it's kind of like, oh, he's very similar to his counterpart. It's just a tad bit different here and there. And so we do see that Curt Connors was somebody who was trying to find a way to regrow his lost arm, very similar to his main Marvel Universe counterpart. Now, here's the thing, because he's also trying to help other people who may have lost body parts as well, lost limbs. And he realized that lizard DNA could possibly help him and other people regrow their lost limbs. Because again, lizards are able to regrow their lost limbs. Now, when it comes to Curt Connors, he was working out of a university, and he had a lot of interns kind of helping him out with this project. Here's the thing, because he did get a visit from the dean, and when it comes to the dean, unfortunately, he tells Curt Connors their funding has been pulled because the university is not doing as well as it used to be. And so now they have to make some cuts. Unfortunately, those cuts had to be Curt Connors' project. Now, this breaks Curt Connors' heart so much. But the thing is, the dean tells us that it's been 5, almost 6 years since Curt Connors has been working on this project. And he only got to phase 6. Well, almost got to phase 6. But the problem is, they need to get to phase 7. Which of course is testing it on humans. But unfortunately now, it may seem he will never be able to achieve that goal. And so of course, it breaks his heart and he begins to drink. Now we have all the interns about to leave. They realize that Curt Connors is in his office as a broken man who just lost his dream goal. And so now, because he's drunk and not thinking straight, he says, we're going to do phase 7 right now. We're going to test it on myself. Now, most of the interns, they laugh. They're like, nah, bruh, we are not down with this at all, except one of them. One stays, and she says she watched what happened to Curt Connors. He basically injected the chemical into his body. He did regrow his lost arm, but then slowly he began to change into the lizard. Now, she passed out, but apparently Curt Connors had disappeared. But that is when we pick up with Spider-Man. Now, you do have Peter Parker tell us that this takes place after, I want to say the second story arc, but also after he told Mary Jane that he is Spider-Man. Because currently in this storyline, she's away right now for some kind of trip with her parents. And so it's just him kind of writing a letter or emailing her and telling her what's currently going on in New York City with his spider life. And of course, he tells her that he is going to go after the lizard. And so you do have Spider-Man go into the sewers. Now, the only reason why he knew to go down there because he also heard the rumors about the idea that there's some kind of monster in the sewers who's going around killing off different people left and right. And so, of course, he realized that he needed to be a hero and go down into the sewers to figure out if there is some kind of monster down there. And of course, he finds the lizard. Now, he tells us right off the bat that by this point in the Ultimate Marvel universe, he fought against Green Goblin, Kingpin, Electro, and matter of fact, if we count the Ultimate Marvel team-up books that we have covered so far, you can count in Sabretooth, the Mandroids, Hulk, and the list goes on. Heck, even the Punisher as well. Either way, when it comes to the lizard, this is somewhat new because when it comes to the Lizard, he's not thinking like those other characters think like. He's thinking more of like an animal that just wants to feed on people. He's a wild beast. And so for Spider-Man, this is a new kind of enemy. And so they do fight for a few pages, but unfortunately, Peter Parker is having a hard time fighting against the Lizard. But that is when he is saved by Man-Thing. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to Man-Thing in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, we don't know much about him. Really, this is the only time he does something for Spider-Man or really anybody in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, because the other 3 times he does appear, he is literally just in a cameo part, and that's really it. Now, we are told at the very beginning who is Man-Thing in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, and really, it's more about the idea that he was a scientist known as Ted Sallis, who was forced to inject himself with an untested serum that he had created as a way to protect it from enemies who were trying to steal it. But the problem was, it was untested, and so of course it changed him into a mindless creature that's made of swamp and sewer matter, and now that's really it. I mean, he does have some crazy powers, but unfortunately we're not told what those powers do in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And really, when it comes to him helping out Spider-Man, he shows us one of those random powers that he has where he is able to turn the Lizard back into Kirk Connors, a regular man. And that's it. Like literally, that is how Spider-Man was able to get Kirk Connors back into Kirk Connors. But really, it wasn't because of Spider-Man, it was because of Man-Thing. Either way, the day is saved. And really, the story kind of ends at a very fast pace. And what I mean by that is you do have Spider-Man writing down what he wanted to tell Mary Jane in this letter or possibly email about him fighting against the Lizard. But because she already knows that 1, he is Spider-Man, and 2, he feels like it would be better for him to go ahead and tell her in person. And when it comes to Kirk Connors, well, unfortunately, he leaves a letter behind for his wife to find, to tell his wife that he is not coming back until he is able to figure out what in the world went wrong with his Lizard serum, but to also make sure that he does not change back into the Lizard and have the possibility of hurting her, but also their son. And so really, that is the Okay, so we are going to basically continue our coverage over Ultimate Marvel Team Up, and we pick up with issue number 11. Now, this is technically the second time that Spider-Man in the Ultimate Marvel Universe has teamed up with the X-Men. The first time was actually Ultimate Marvel Team Up number 1, where he had teamed up with, well, Wolverine. And now this time he'll team up with some more X-Men characters like Wolverine, Cyclops, Beast, Jean Grey, and even Storm. Now, here's the thing, guys, because remember, when it came to Ultimate Marvel Team Up, it was given to us after the first story arc of Ultimate Spider-Man, where Peter Parker became Spider-Man and fought against the Green Goblin. And so when it came to the Ultimate Marvel Team Up series, it was technically used as a way to kind of explore this brand new universe that was given to us by Marvel Comics in the early 2000s. And so they used Spider-Man as a way to kind of explore this brand new universe. He met all these different kinds of characters, you know, like Wolverine, Iron Man, Hulk, and Punisher, and Daredevil, and the list goes on. Now, here comes the big problem with Ultimate Marvel Team Up books. Most of them literally suck. And on top of that, most of them are not really canon at all, because most of them do not get referenced at all either. My biggest example is Ultimate Marvel Team Up number 9, where Peter Parker meets the Fantastic Four. Marvel came out and said that one right there is literally not canon at all. And so as we dive into issue number 11, well, this kind of continues one of my two problems I have with this actual series, which is that it sucks. Issue number 11 is really more just Peter Parker skipping school and running into the X-Men. And guys, I'm not lying to you here, because really, the story starts off with Peter Parker, telling Aunt May that he is about to go to school. And she's so proud of him because, he's been a good student, a good nephew. He's not skipping school at all. But in reality, homeboy is plotting to, skip school. And so as soon as Aunt May leaves, homeboy goes to hang out with Mary Jane, Liz Allen, Kenny, and also Gwen Stacy, the characters we met so far in the first 2 or 3 story arcs of Ultimate Spider-Man. Either way, he skipped school to hang out with them. Now, something else to mention here is that by this point in the Ultimate Marvel timeline, Peter Parker told Mary Jane that he is Spider-Man, so she knows, but no one else knows, especially not Gwen Stacy. Either way, you do have our, young teenagers here get in a car and they drive around. They're all kind of like, oh my gosh, where can we go? The day is ours. We can go anywhere in the city. And they literally go to the mall. And really, you can kind of tell that when it came to Brian Michael Bendis, he did not put a lot of effort in this storyline at first. Now, at the end, you can kind of see that he did put some kind of effort, but still not a lot. Either way, once you have our characters arrive at the mall, they're very upset about the idea that they're at the mall, because the whole point of skipping school is that you should be able to go to different areas that you don't usually go to because of time crunch and also after school jobs and different kind of things. And so now you have more time, you should be able to go do different things that you don't usually do. But of course, they go to the mall. Now, when they do arrive at the mall, you have Kenny run off to go get some food. Mary Jane wants Peter Parker to kind of leave with her so that, he could use his powers and kind of swing her around town because he's now Spider-Man. Except that is the moment where Peter Parker realized that somebody else that he has met before has walked into the mall as well. And that would be Wolverine, because like I said, these two characters met in Ultimate Marvel Team Up #1. Now here's the thing though, because at first, Wolverine does not see Peter Parker. Matter of fact, he has no idea what Peter Parker looks like. But we have to remember that when it comes to Wolverine, well, he has the ability to remember people by their smell. And so, of course, while you have Wolverine, Storm, Beast, Jean Grey, and Cyclops, no Colossus, and Beast too, as they walk into the mall, you have Wolverine realize that, I smell something very familiar, like Spider-Man. And he looks over at Peter Parker and realizes, oh, you're Spider-Man. This is what you look like. Now, the last time these two characters saw each other, we have to remember that Peter Parker told Wolverine that he's 26 years old. And so you have Wolverine kind of like, 26, yeah, you're a kid. But on top of that, this is now Wolverine now knowing what Peter Parker looks like under the mask. And as soon as Peter sees Wolverine, well, of course, he begins to freak out. But of course, you have Wolverine being, well, Wolverine. And so he decides to, mess with Peter Parker. Kind of walk up to him and his friends and be all like, hey, Petey, I haven't seen in a long time, buddy. And of course, you have Peter Parker freaking out because now you have Wolverine here. And Wolverine is kind of like, hey, did he tell you guys that I'm Logan? I'm his long-lost cousin? Now, here's the thing, though, because the rest of the X-Men cast has no idea what Wolverine is doing or how Wolverine knows Peter Parker. And so, in reality, they kind of believe in the idea that Wolverine and Peter Parker are really cousins. But we already know that is not true. Either way, you have Wolverine continue to mess with Peter Parker. And homeboy is like freaking out because he is wondering if Wolverine is going to reveal to Liz, Kenny, and Gwen that he is, of course, Spider-Man. And so, he does kind of have a good reason here. Now, this leads into a certain kind of problem, and that would be Liz Allen. Now remember, in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, Liz Allen hates mutants a lot. Like, literally, in the first story arc of Ultimate Spider-Man, I want to say, possibly the second or third story arc, she tells us that she does not like mutants at all. Which is kind of crazy because down the road, she finds out that she is a mutant and she becomes Firestar. Either way, when it comes to her, she realized that Cyclops is wearing a visor. And she's kind of like, are you a mutant? And he says, yes, I am. And she literally freaks out and runs away. Like, just like that, gone, bam, track star speed. And you have everybody wondering what in the world just happened. But her friends, Petey, Mary Jane, Kenny, and also Gwen, they know because Liz is scared of mutants. Now, this was the part where you have Bendis to kind of begin the process of saying like, hey, she had an uncle that was a mutant, but he disappeared after doing some horrible things. That uncle is actually her father, and her father is the Blob. Either way, she leaves. Now, the rest of the story is really more of Gwen Stacy asking the X-Men a set of questions to kind of get to know them better. The idea of like, okay, what is a mutant, or what is it like to be a mutant? Because again, this was the early days of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. We just got Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate Marvel Team Up, and we think we have Ultimate X-Men Volume 1 as well. But that's it really. You don't have, the Fantastic Four, all the Ultimates, or the other miniseries that came out over the years in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. So for Gwen Stacy, it's her kind of want to know more about what it's like to be a mutant. And so, of course, her first question is really more like, hey, how do your powers work? She asks Cyclops, and he explains how his powers work. And then after that, she then kind of like, okay, how did your parents feel about the idea of you guys being mutants? Now, most of the X-Men have no idea who their parents are, or like, for example, most of their parents kind of gave them up at a young age. And so, unfortunately, only the ones who actually have parents can say, some parents were very accepting, and other parents were not that very accepting. They kind of hate us, and some loved us no matter what. Now, you also have Gwen ask the X-Men, okay, do you ever wish that you were never a mutant? And you have them say, no, we're very proud of the idea of being a mutant. It's very interesting and kind of cool. It makes us different. And then her last and final question is really more about the idea of, okay, but are you afraid of humans? And you have Jean say no, because their goal, the X-Men goal, is to make a world where mutants and humans can live together with no kind of problems at all. And that's their goal, to show that mutants are not evil. But on top of that, mutants and humans can work together as one. And that's really it for this particular storyline. It ends on that note, and we get told that Peter Parker is going to meet Doctor Strange of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And that's And so getting into today's storyline, we do pick up with Stephen Strange. Now, currently, this is 1 year in the past, where you have him currently hanging out with a bunch of friends, just, partying, talking, drinking, whatever. Now, while they're all hanging out, that is the moment where somebody comes to the front door. And when one of his friends answers the front door, there's a guy there looking for Stephen and telling Stephen, we have to talk about your father. And this is where we kind of find out Stephen Strange had no idea what his father did in the past. And this begins the process of us slowly learning the entire origin of Stephen Strange in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, there is a quick page where we do see Spider-Man, and really it's more just Spider-Man kind of complaining about his life. And honestly, when it comes to Peter Parker in this book right here, he does take a backseat for the most of the story arc. Like I said, it really does focus more on Doctor Strange. And so then we jump over to a random bar where we pick up with a character known as Xandu, wearing all green, as he meets up with another character known as Henry. Now, when it comes to Henry, he was hired by Xandu to find a certain kind of artifact known as the Wand of Watum. Now, the wand is currently with Doctor Strange, but the thing is, Xandu thought that Henry would find the item and also retrieve the item for him as well. And you have Henry say, no. You told me to find it, I found it, and of course it's with Doctor Strange. If you want to get it, go get it from him. Now, when it comes to Xandu, he's very confused, and the reason why, because he heard that Doctor Strange was no longer around. And so you have Henry say, no, that was the old Doctor Strange. This is the new one. This is his son. And so we begin to dive in to learn how in the world did Doctor Strange of this universe became the Sorcerer of Supreme. Now, when it comes to Stephen Strange Sr., his origin is very similar to the main Marvel Universe counterpart, because when it comes to Stephen Strange, he was a great surgeon until he had a car accident and his hands were severely damaged. And with his hands being severely damaged, of course, he was unable to be a surgeon. And so he went out of his way to find the Ancient One. Now, when he found the Ancient One, of course, they taught them, different magical things, and that led him to become the Sorcerer of Supreme as soon as the Ancient One had to step down and leave the Earth completely. And so as soon as they left the Earth, you had Stephen Strange Sr. take the title of Doctor Strange, or really the title of Sorcerer of Supreme. And so his goal was to protect the world from different magical creatures. But right after Stephen Strange Sr. was able to take those titles, he then moved into the classic house we always saw Doctor Strange live in. Now, as soon as he moved in, we kind of find out why. Because the Ancient One used that house and lived in that house to protect many different artifacts that were kept in that house. But with the Ancient One gone, of course, Stephen Strange Sr. had to move in to protect those artifacts, including the Wand of Watum. Now, here's the thing, because as soon as he moved in, he got an assistant, and that assistant was Wong. But he also got an intern, not an intern, a apprentice, better term to use. Now, when it comes to his apprentice, her name was Clea. Now, when it comes to his apprentice, at first, it was more kind of like a teacher-student relationship. But unfortunately, the two fell in love with one another, and she got pregnant. The problem was, though, after she soon announced that she was pregnant, Doctor Strange Sr. just disappeared, and no one knows what in the world happened to him. And so with him gone, now the world had lost their Sorcerer of Supreme. Now, when it came to Clea, her main goal to make sure that her son never finds out about his father's origin, because she was so upset about the idea that, one, that he disappeared, but two, she could not find any kind of clues to figure out what in the world happened to him. She kind of feels like she was abandoned, or possibly some other magical creature took Stephen Strange Sr. away for good. Either way, her main goal to make sure that her son, Stephen Strange Jr., what we saw in the beginning of this book, never knows anything about his father. But she had no idea there was a system put in place to make sure that even if Stephen Strange Sr. left, if he had a child still alive somewhere, that child would have to take his place. And unfortunately, it was Stephen Strange Jr., the one we saw at the very beginning of this book. And so that is how he became the Doctor Strange of the Ultimate Marvel Universe, because as soon as he was found, he began to learn about different magical things. But getting back over to the present day, you have Xandu very upset about the idea that Henry did not go out of his way to retrieve the item. And so you have Xandu try to use a spell on Henry to, go to the bathroom and kill himself. Unfortunately for Xandu, Henry knew that he would try something, and so he gave himself a protection spell. Unfortunately, though, Xandu used a spell on other people at the bar to begin the process of attacking Henry, to kill him for not completing the job that Xandu wanted him to do. Now, luckily for Henry, well, Spider-Man was nearby, and you have Peter come in and take out the thugs that were beating up on Henry. Unfortunately, right after, as soon he was able to save Henry, Xandu appears behind Spider-Man and then puts a spell on Spider-Man. It says, "You have to go over to the home of Doctor Strange, break the seal that protects the house, kill the doctor, but to also give me the wand of Watum as well." And unfortunately, because Peter is now under his control, Peter leaves and begins the process of heading over to the home of Doctor Strange. And so as you jump into the second chapter, you pick up with Stephen Strange confronting his mother to hopefully learn more about his father. Because remember, she did not want him to know anything at all about his father nor about magic. And matter of fact, the only thing she told him is that your dad was a great surgeon who died in a car accident. Moving on. But of course, back then there was Google. He did a search on his father to find out that his dad was Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer of Supreme. But unfortunately, when it comes to his mother, she hates the idea of admitting what his father was. And so once again, she's all like, "No, your dad was a surgeon who died in a car accident. I don't want to hear anything else about your father nor magic, and that is it." And of course, he had no choice but to follow her rules. But now he knows that he was on the right path, that his dad was the Sorcerer of Supreme. But getting back over to the present day, we do pick up with Doctor Strange Jr. still kind of learning how to be a sorcerer. He's still learning the ropes of the idea of different kind of spells, the different artifacts, all of that. Like, yes, he's been doing this for a while, but because unfortunately he does not have any kind of guidance at all, he has to learn on his own. And so unfortunately, homeboy's kind of struggling. Now, while he is trying to study, well, that is the moment where you have Spider-Man appear. And remember, Spider-Man is currently being controlled by Xandu. Either way, you have our two heroes fight against each other until you have Strange being able to send Spider-Man away into the astral plane until he knows how to get him out of the astral plane, but to also calm him down as well. Now, after you have Spider-Man wake back up after being knocked out by Strange, you didn't have Spider-Man realize that Strange and Wong had taken off his mask. So unfortunately, now Strange and Wong knows that he's Peter Parker. Well, honestly, they don't know his name. The only thing they do know is that he's a kid or a teenager. Either way, you didn't have Spider-Man tell Strange why he is here for, that he was being controlled by somebody and he was told to do three things. 1, break the seal to the house. 2, kill off Strange. And 3, get the wand of Watum. Now, as soon as he tells Wong and Strange to break the seal, he's all like, oh my god, the seal is broken because Spider-Man did come through the window, which was the seal. And now with the seal being broken, almost anybody can now have access into the house, which means the artifacts are technically in danger right now. Xandu can just go in there and get the wand if he wants to on his own. Now, something I do want to mention right now is that when it comes to Wong, even though he's very knowledgeable on the different kinds of magical things, he's not very powerful in the magic department like, of course, Stephen Strange Jr. And so he may have more knowledge on magic than Strange, but Strange is more powerful in magic than Wong. Either way, though, you have Wong tell Strange, I'm going to hold off Xandu. While I do that right there, I need you to find a spell that can trick him and get him out of the house, and then hopefully we can repair the actual seal. Now the problem is though, like I said, Wong is very knowledgeable on magic, but not as powerful with magic. And so unfortunately, when it comes to his battle against Xandu, Xandu was able to defeat Wong very easily and then find Doctor Strange. Now, really, I would say he got defeated very easily. It's really more of Wong kind of like realizing I cannot hold him off too long. So I'm hoping that I did hold him off long enough for Strange to find a spell that can defeat Xandu. Now, the rest of the book does get wrapped up very quickly. As a matter of fact, when it comes to Brian Michael Bendis, almost every single story in the Ultimate Marvel Team-Up book does get wrapped up at a very fast pace. Either way, when it comes to Strange, he does try his best to use a spell on Xandu to hopefully trick him, but unfortunately it doesn't work, and so you have our two characters fight against each other. Now the thing is, when it comes to Strange Jr., he's still a novice. He's still learning how to do magic. And for me personally, it kind of says right here why Wong is not the best choice to be a teacher. Yes, Wong has a whole lot of knowledge about the different things in the magical world or different artifacts. But the thing is, his magical level is not as strong as the Ancient One or even Doctor Strange Sr. And so unfortunately, he cannot really show Junior how to do the spells correctly and properly. And so of course, you have Strange Jr. struggling when it comes to fighting against Xandu. Now, luckily for Strange and Wong, well, Spider-Man was still there in the building. And so he was able to sneak up on Xandu, knock out Xandu to give Strange and Wong the ability to just defeat him, and the day is saved. And so then you have Peter kind of like, dude, I'm done. Like all this different kinds of magical things being mind controlled, it's just too much for me. And so you have Spider-Man just leave. And the book ends on that note right there, really. So it's kind of like, okay, we did get the origin of Doctor Strange. Anyways, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.
As we dive into today's storyline, we actually pick up 6 months ago in the past, where we actually pick up with the ambassador of Latveria. Of course, that would be Ambassador Golog. Now, matter of fact, we met Golog in a previous storyline in Ultimate Marvel Team-Up, when Spider-Man met Iron Man. Now, that story right there is going to be referenced here in a moment, but as we do pick up 6 months in the past, it's really more of the ambassador arriving into America for the first time and trying to paint a picture that when it comes to Latveria, it's not a bad country, it's a great country. It is a beautiful country. But of course, we all know it's really a huge lie that the ambassador is telling. But again, he's trying to paint a better picture of what Latveria is actually like. But then he does run into an intern. Now, when it comes to the intern, he realized there's something off about her, but unfortunately, he has no idea why he feels like that or what could be off about her. Now, we do jump forward 3 months after that moment right there, but we're still 3 months in the past from the present day. But this tells us it takes place right after he had failed to steal Iron Man's tech in the Spider-Man Iron Man Team-Up book that we already did. And so now we know that storyline takes place 3 months in the past from the present moment of this book right here. Either way though, we do see Golog being very upset with the idea that he had failed. Now when he does go inside his office, he realized that the same intern he saw 3 months ago is currently in his office for some unknown reason. Now matter of fact, she does tell him that she's in his office to give him his soup, but it seems kind of weird that she's in his office without him being there. And so of course, this makes him even more suspicious about who this intern could possibly be. Now, we do jump forward in time once again, except by this point, we are only 1 week from the present day. And so now we see Mr. Golog once again confronting the intern, except this time it's him saying, you know what? I had enough of your games. I know that you're not an intern here for an internship, that in reality, you're some kind of spy. And actually, he is right, because that is when he pulls off the intern wig to reveal that it was Black Widow. And apparently the entire time she has been there, she has been placing different kinds of recording systems as a way to record every single conversation that Golog had in his office with other people. Now, when it comes to Black Widow, she does try her best to get the heck out of there because her cover has been blown. But unfortunately, right when it seems like she'll be able to get away, she is shot from behind by some kind of, I want to say taser that basically shocks her and knocks her out. And so now she has been captured by Golog and his security team. But then we have to jump over to the Daily Bugle. Now, when we do, we actually pick up with Ben Urich getting another phone call from somebody to warn him about something going on in the world of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. The reason why I'm saying that, because when it came to Spider-Man meeting the Hulk, in that storyline right there, he also got a phone call from somebody to warn him that the Hulk was going to arrive in New York. Either way, in this storyline, he got a phone call from somebody who worked at the embassy, who's very concerned for the ambassador. And the reason why, because it looked like that he had just kidnapped the intern and drove off somewhere. And so she was so scared to call the police that she decided to call Ben Urich, because she saw an ad on a bus somewhere in New York to say, hey, you want to tell me a story? Call Ben Urich. And so she did. Either way, when it comes to Ben Urich, he is telling JJ, but also Robbie Robertson. Now, while he is telling those two people about what is happening, of course, you have Peter Parker overhearing the conversation. And so with him hearing that somebody was just kidnapped, it's Peter saying, you know what? It's time for me to be a hero. It's time for me to be Spider-Man. And so he leaves the Daily Bugle to hopefully figure out where in the world the ambassador had went with Natasha, the Black Widow. But getting back over to Mr. Vlog and also Black Widow and some of his security guys, we currently see Mr. Vlog basically trying to interrogate Black Widow, but at the same time trying to, torture her as well to kind of get the information that he is looking for. Now, unfortunately for Mr. Golog, Black Widow is not somebody you can just easily break. Like, matter of fact, she's not even scared of the man at all. And so when he tries to scare her, try to torture her, she's kind of like, you know what? Keep trying everything you want to try on me. I'm not going to break that easily. Now, with all that being said, you do have the Black Widow being able to get close enough to Mr. Golog, break out of her binds, and actually snap his neck, killing off Golog just like that. Now, real quickly, before he had died, he did mention that he does work for Victor Von Doom. And so we're left to believe that if this story is canon, by this point in the timeline, Victor Von Doom had already took over Latveria, which means that possibly Ultimate Fantastic Four Volume 2 had already took place in the overall timeline of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. But at the same time though, this story was not really referenced again besides Ultimate X-Men and one particular story arc. Either way, she is able to break free, kill off Golog, and get out of the building. Now, as soon as she is able to exit the building, well, that is when Spider-Man is swinging by. And when he does, he realizes a young girl who's running out the building looking kind of scared or possibly worried could be the missing person that he was trying to find. And so, of course, he does swing down, he grabs her, and they do get the heck out of there. Now, when it comes to Black Widow, she does kind of play the whole game of, oh my god, I'm in danger, can you please save me? And of course, Spider-Man falls for it, grabs her, and they get the heck out of there. Now, of course, you do have Black Widow kind of play more mind games with Spider-Man, because as soon as they are able to reach a rooftop, you have Spider-Man realize the police had arrived at the scene where she had technically got saved at. And so he's kind of like, hey, let me go ahead, swing you back down there so that you were able to tell your side of the story. But she's like, nah, I don't want to. Now he's wondering why in the world this young lady does not want to go down and tell the police her side of the story if she was, kidnapped. Except you didn't have Black Widow get kind of close to Spider-Man, where it seems like she's possibly making some moves on Spider-Man. And you can tell Homeboy is just freaking out. He has no idea what to do here. Now, when it comes to this storyline, it most likely does take place after he already told Mary Jane that he is Spider-Man, and most likely the two characters are dating. So for Parker, it's kind of like, yo, what do I do here? Do I make out with Black Widow, or do I be, faithful to my woman? Unfortunately, it was a trap, because as soon as she gets close to him, she is able to kind of inject some kind of chemical that of course knocks him out just like that. Now, before Black Widow is able to leave, that is when she is confronted by Nick Fury. Now, with this section right here being the last section, it does kind of give us some ideas that Black Widow was technically a free agent, that she was not working for S.H.I.E.L.D. at all when it came to that mission. Matter of fact, the reason why she went after Gold Log is to kind of prove that she's actually worth something for S.H.I.E.L.D., but also for Nick Fury. She was looking for a job. And so when Nick Fury realizing what she could do, he's like, you know what, let me go ahead and bring you into my organization. Now, the story does end on that note where you have S.H.I.E.L.D., Black Widow, and Nick Fury leave Spider-Man behind, knocked out, but you do have Nick Fury kind of hint the idea that sooner or later him and Spider-Man are going to talk, which we already know they're going to. They're going to have a close bond in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. But you do have the book also tell us that very soon the Ultimates Volume 1 is going to release. And in that book, you're going to see more of Black Widow, which we honestly do. But this does end the actual couple pages really does come from a Chinese folktale where you do have a young prince who is trying to walk away from his father's empire, trying to find land where his father does not rule over. Now, the young prince is currently being followed or being watched over by a spider. And so you have the spider ask the young prince, why in the world are you trying to walk away from your father's empire? Because sooner or later, all this land will belong to you. But the young prince says he does not want the land that his father has. And so he's trying his best to move on from what his father had built. Now, the first couple pages, we do pick up with a character known as Liko. And when it comes to Liko, she just arrived in Chinatown in New York. Now, when she does arrive, at first, she's trying her best to take in what she sees when it comes to this particular area. Now, as soon as she arrives and get a good look around, that is when her aunt calls out her name. And of course, it tells us that she is going to stay with her aunt. Unfortunately, before she is able to make it over to where her aunt is at, that is when you have some thugs run by, grab her purse, and try to get away from her. Now, luckily for her, you do have Shang-Chi, who is nearby, basically being able to use the different fighting styles that he had learned over the years to kind of help her out by taking out the thugs, but to also get her purse back. Now, once he does all of that right there, she begins to wonder who that guy was who just used different kinds of fighting styles. Unfortunately, when it comes to her aunt, she's kind of like, no. Do not worry about him at all. Matter of fact, get inside the store right now. Now, when it comes to Shang-Chi, we do learn that he is currently working at some kind of shop that sells fishes, but apparently Liko's aunt and the shop owner that Shang-Chi is working for, they're all trying their best to kind of keep the true identity of Shang-Chi a secret. They're afraid of the idea of the world finding out who he truly is. But again, when it comes to Liko, she wants to know, but aunt says no.
You will not know. And matter of fact, get in the house right now before anything else happens to you. But getting back over to the Chinese folktale, we do pick up with the spider who is still currently watching over the young prince. Now, when it comes to the young prince, he does tell the spider that when he does reach new land, he wants to make sure once again, this land is not being ruled over by his father, but everything he will earn on that new land will be done with him being a great man rather than a prince. And it's him saying that if he goes somewhere as a prince, most likely people are going to give him everything he needs to survive. He doesn't want that. Instead, he wants to go to a new land where he's not a prince, that he is just a regular man trying to earn his way in life. But then we finally pick up with Spider-Man and Mary Jane, where you have the two characters in Chinatown just, having their own kind of discussions. Now, as they're walking in Chinatown, they do see Shang-Chi currently surrounded by a bunch of thugs who are still very upset with what he did earlier, because we come to find out that there is a gang in Chinatown that apparently Shang-Chi has been stopping left and right. And so they're getting tired of the idea of him messing up all their different kinds of operations. Either way, when it comes to Peter Parker, Mary Jane, and they see him being surrounded, Shang-Chi, you have Peter freak out, run off to change into his Spider-Man outfit to hopefully help out Shang-Chi. Except by the time he gets over there, well, Shang-Chi is able to take down every single thug that was there trying to jump him. And so for Peter Parker, who's now Spider-Man, this is a very awkward moment, because literally as soon as he arrives, the fight just ends right there. And you have our two heroes look at each other like, oh, hi. And for Peter's like, okay, I'm gonna leave now. Clearly you did not need my help at all. And Mary Jane knows that Shang-Chi doing that right there is gonna have Peter Parker very upset. He is going to whine about this situation right here for an entire month. Now, also in the same section, we do see that Lyko just watched Shang-Chi fight against a group of thugs. And so now she's kind of, being that mysterious character for unknown reasons. Like, why does she want to know so much about Shang-Chi? And so once again, you do have Lyko ask her aunt one more time, like, hey, auntie, are you for sure you have no idea who that guy is? Now, when it comes to her aunt, she does tell Lyko, like, no, I do not remember his name. But the reason why I don't want you near him at all is because he's the only person who is currently going up against a gang in this area that is trying to take over this area. I don't want my niece, which is you, in the middle of their battles, because I feel like sooner or later he is going to die, Shang-Chi, because he is the only person who is going up against a gang by himself. He is literally going to die. I don't want you anywhere near him at all. Now, as soon as the conversation is done, that is when you have Lyko say, oh, he's Shang-Chi. I found him very easily. And with her saying that right there, we're kind of left to believe that apparently she was hired to find Shang-Chi. And so now she must tell her employer that she was able to find the person that she was hired to look for. But getting back over to the Chinese folktale, we do pick up this time with the king. Now, when it comes to the king, he had hired a great warrior to go after his son, the prince who had walked away from the empire. Now, when it comes to the king, he does tell the great warrior, listen, I need you to find my son, because with him leaving my empire and not deciding to stay here and take over as soon as my time to leave this earth, it became a huge embarrassment to my entire family. So you need to go find him and bring him back here for punishment. Now, when it comes to the great warrior, he does ask the king, what if the prince does not want to come back so easily? And so you have the king tell the warrior, do what you must to bring him back here. He may come back broken, but he must come back alive, because what he did was hugely a mistake, an embarrassment to the entire family.
But as we jump into the second chapter, we do pick up with the folktale once again, where you still have the spider very confused about why the young prince wants to walk away from his father's empire. And so you have the young prince once again say that I want to find land that my father does not rule over. Now the spider is confused because the king have gave the prince so much love. The king has so much money. The king is giving the prince a great future. But again, the prince is not telling the spider the true reason why he is walking away from his father's empire. But then we pick up with Lyko, who is currently meeting up with the gang who have been fighting against Shang-Chi in Chinatown. Now, the reason why she's meeting up with this gang is to use them as a way to complete the job that she was hired to do. Because we kind of find out that Shang-Chi's father is actually a huge crime lord, and he was very upset about the idea of his son walking away from the future that he has set up for his son. And so he had hired Lyko to find Shang-Chi and bring Shang-Chi back over to him. Now here's the thing, because she realized that if Shang-Chi is one of the best fighters in the world, most likely the best fighter in the world, then here's the thing, the gang needs a plan to actually bring him down. And so she says, I've been watching you guys, and the problem is you guys try to attack him one-on-one or with small numbers. This man is a great fighter, probably the best fighter in the entire world. But the thing is, if you want to be able to bring him down, you have to do things differently. And what she means by that is attack him all at once, but with a higher number of people. Stop going at him with 3 or 4 or 5 people. Go at him with 15, 20, 25 people. Heck, bring your entire gang down on him. And once you're able to do that, bring him over to me. And I'll tell my boss, who will then give you a huge nice surprise, a nice place you can use to kind of expand your horizon or expand your operations in other areas of New York. So why not help me so I can help you? And so you have the gang agree to help Lyko go after Shang-Chi. Now we do pick up with Spider-Man and Mary Jane, where you do have Spider-Man being very upset about the idea that he went out of his way to change into his Spider-Man outfit to help Shang-Chi earlier, to only arrive when the battle was already over. And so, of course, he's still very upset about that. But at the same time, he was also very impressed on how Shang-Chi was fighting against those different gang members. And so this is Spider-Man telling Mary Jane that he believes that he should become a better fighter. If he was a better fighter, then when he's out there being Spider-Man, he will be able to take down more enemies very quickly. And so with that being said, you have Mary Jane say, hey, go ahead and ask him, pay him $20, and let's see if he'll be able to teach you some moves. But when you go and talk to him, don't go as Peter Parker, go as Spider-Man. And you have Peter agree this is a good idea, and so he leaves to go learn some moves from Shang-Chi. But getting back over to Shang-Chi, you have Shang-Chi be confronted by his boss, the shop owner, where you have the shop owner tell Shang-Chi, hey, I just got word that your father knows that you are alive and you are in New York. And matter of fact, there's a lot of money on your head right now, which means different kind of guys or different gang members might come to my shop and try to get to you to get that prize money. Unfortunately, I have to let you go as a way to protect myself, but to also protect my shop and protect my family as well. And so you have the boss say, get the heck out of here. I'm sorry. I'm going to miss you, but I gotta make sure I stay alive. And Shang-Chi understands, hey, you know what? Protect you, protect your family, protect your shop. I will be able to protect myself. But getting back over to the folktale, we do pick up once again with the young prince, except this time the young prince is surrounded by a bunch of warriors who are planning on killing him off or to bring him back over to his father for punishment for leaving the empire. And this kind of shows what's happening in the real world when it comes to Shang-Chi, who left his father's empire behind. His dad was a crime lord who was trying to pass over the business
business over to Shang-Chi, but unfortunately, he walked away from the family and the business. And so in the real world, it's happening right now where you have Shang-Chi trying to find somewhere else to go and hide, and he is surrounded by a bunch of different gang members who got word on who he is, but also the idea that if they're able to bring him in, they'll get a whole lot of money. And so we jump into Shang-Chi trying his best to fight against all the different gang members that were basically brought in to take him out or to bring him back over to his father. Now, like Lyko said earlier, the reason why the gang has been failing when it came to stopping Shang-Chi is because they attack him with low numbers. Why not go into the whole army to bring him down? And so we see a huge amount of gang members attacking him all at once. And unfortunately, he is having a hard time trying to win this fight. And at first, it may look like that he might win, but then again, the number is too high. There's too many people right now coming at him all at once. Now, luckily for him, Spider-Man does arrive. And when Spider-Man does arrive, it's him being able to help out Shang-Chi fight against all these different guys. And once you have our two heroes being able to take out most of the gang, you have Spider-Man grab Shang-Chi and they get the heck out of there. Now, Shang-Chi is very confused about the idea of why Spider-Man keeps popping up left and right, and now especially this time. And so you have Spider-Man tell Shang-Chi the reason why he's here this time is because he was hoping that Shang-Chi could teach him some, some different kind of moves that he could use that could make him a better superhero. Now, when it comes to Shang-Chi, he does kind of feel like he owes Peter Parker because technically Peter did just save his butt from all those different gang members. And so he does show Peter Parker one particular move, and that's literally it. He says, unfortunately, I cannot show you anything else. But on top of that, I have to disappear now because there are a lot of men who are currently looking for me. And so thank you once again for helping me. But again, I must go. And so that technically is the ending for today's video. And so with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.